YouTube's good. Everyone is playing now. Well, streaming on all three platforms. Okay. Looks like we got some silence today to start with this one. Uh-oh. That's okay. It happens. Quite tired today anyway. I feel like I need a nap. So this stream might be, well, probably going to be a bit shorter than usual. Maybe 90 minutes instead of 2 hours. Perhaps only an hour. We'll see. See if things start picking up here. All right, I'm going to get the volume checked for this. Actually, let's check the volume on this. Because we do need the guitar. Yes, yes. Okay. Amp is sounding fine. Now let's get it going through the monitors. There we go. And with that there, now let's finish getting the volume set here.
Simple definition, but it's not the easiest thing to master, especially on the guitar. So today we're covering the types of chords played.
Okay. I think we're good here. It's always so sad and disappointing. Well, maybe a small amount of sadness, small disappointment when nobody's here. We got one viewer at least. Hello. Maybe. YouTube says there's at least one. Anyway, so here we go. Gonna get started. So today's main, well, really it's going to be the only reaction one this time. We're only going to do one because after this, I've decided to do a little bit of a change to chromatic scale riffs for the Metal Modes course that's almost done. Instead of using my own personal music for it, I don't know. I just feel like I could do a better job of presenting chromatic scale if I write it purposely. Like, it needs to be very chromatic sounding, not just taking stuff that for the most part uses the chromatic scale from my own material. So anyway, just felt it would be more appropriate, and it's something I kind of wrestled with for a while. But anyhow, the thing we're going to be watching, responding to, learning from, I'd imagine we're going to learn some stuff on this one. The video is called Every Guitar Chord Explained. And for those of you who have been following and watching, you know I take issue when someone says things like every or all, like every chord, every scale, every mode, all the chords, all the scales, things like that. But it does say Every Guitar Chord Explained by a music professor. So I would think this guy knows more about music theory than I do. I am not a music professor. So this guy, he has, degrees in this stuff. Or at least one. Couldn't tell you what it is. He might tell us. His name is Andre Flood. Last name spelled F-L-U-D-D. Hello, Plastodon. Good to see you on. And I've seen some of his videos before. Nothing music theory based, though. He does guitar reviews. He does some pretty in-depth reviews, too. Like, he'll like really get a good feel of how the guitar is before doing a pretty in-depth explanation on, how he feels about it, how it plays for him and all that stuff. So, the guy comes across as quite intelligent. He's well spoken. You can understand what he's talking about, at least in the guitar reviews I've seen. So I'm very curious with the clickbait title how this is going to go. So again, I do imagine we're going to learn some stuff here. I heard the first few seconds where he's defining what a chord is, which I've always defined a chord as at least 2 different notes. But he's going to say it's 3. And he's a music professor. So anyway, let's get into it. We'll start watching and listening and sipping on some coffee. Stave off my impending nap, which I need to take. Which was also why I'm cutting the stream off a bit early. I have a doctor's checkup for the first time in well over 20 years. So I got to be ready for that. Anyway, so let's see what happens. Let's get into it. I think we got the volume set. And here we go from the top.
3 or more notes played simultaneously with a harmonic function is the definition of chords we are using today. Simple definition, but it's not the easiest thing to master, especially on the guitar. So today we're covering the types of chords played on guitar, but more importantly, how to efficiently go about learning them. I can promise that if you download the free accompanying PDF and follow along, you'll have multiple big realizations along the way.
Goodness, okay. That's a lot that just flashed on the screen. Let's take a look at that. So yeah, his definition, let's go over that again. He had that on the screen, so that's good. 3 or more notes played simultaneously with a harmonic function. Can you have 3 notes played simultaneously that do not have a harmonic function? Curious what he's going to say a harmonic function is. And he said that's the definition we are using today. Is there a different kind of definition? And what about power chords? A 5th chord is a chord, right? Or does that not count? What about dyads? Is a 5th chord a dyad? I guess so, because it's 2 different notes. But then you have things like, playing the root and 3rd at the same time, which is a major chord dyad, such as this. So that's an A major dyad. I suppose I should be playing with no distortion today, or at least for this part. So there's, an A major dyad. There's an A major triad. I think I need to check my tuning. Damn, that's embarrassing. Anyway, and then it is a Jason Becker model. Yes, indeed. And he said in one video, this is his main guitar, too. I wonder how that thing would play. I've never played one. Alright, so let's get back to the stuff he had up on screen. I don't know if I want to download the PDF here. I don't know how well that would go with the reaction stuff. So the topics include only 3 chord categories. Okay. Google is wrong about 7th chords. Ha! My phone just picked that up. That's funny. Oh my goodness. Okay, Google is wrong about 7th chords. Very interesting. Stop picking up the thing, Google. Shut up. The phone keeps making... Okay, anyway. Rules aren't always rules. Major isn't really major, and minor isn't really minor. Okay, I'm very interested now. What? I don't know. Should we, let's... Follow along PDF. Let's check it out. We'll go back and forth between them. So we have to go through this. God damn it. I don't want to open up my work folder or my work email today. I'll have it sent to this one. Fine. You got me. You got me, you fucking guy. Good on you. Anyway, let's switch this over so I'm not showing too much personal stuff. Alright, we're getting the PDF. It might help us follow along better. Might help us learn what he's going to teach here. His descriptions there really got me interested. Okay, confirm. Well, hopefully it doesn't take too long for this to show up. I'll check back here in a moment. Okay. Oh, yes. But he said he wasn't going to spam me. Or is it just because I shared the email address up there? I get spam all the frickin' time. Anyway, so yeah, this is really it. I'm very curious about this. Only 3 chord categories. Google is wrong about 7th chords. Rules aren't always rules. Interesting. Very interesting. Because that's one thing I preach heavily. Well, I don't know. This might be something different. Because like I always tell people, like a third is a third, a second is a second, a flat third is a flat third. Always, always, always. So there must be something else going on here. And then major isn't really major. What the hell does that mean? Minor isn't really minor. What the hell does that mean? Oh, my emails are up there. It's fine. What are they going to see? A bunch. All they're going to see is the spam that was there. But I appreciate the concern. As far as my email address isn't very hard to find anyway. It's up all over the place. Alright. Here we go.
Well, big realizations along the way. Since we have 3 in the definition, our first chords are going to be triads. A triad only has 3 notes, but we can repeat any of those notes when playing a chord shape. You'll see that in both open position chords and bar chords.
Okay, I'm glad he said that. So, like, that's one thing I tell students, triad, 3-note chord. We played the C chord there. Makes sense. I didn't check my tuning. I should have done that first. But yeah, like I tell people, like, play the triad of something. Like when they're filling in their theory homework. And, of course, even though we start with, like, the big open chords and bar chords when it comes to learning those types of chords, as soon as I say play the triad, after they've learned the 3-string ones, or like the minimal ones, they go straight to that. And usually when I see people talking about triads online, they do seem to gravitate towards just the minimal 3-string stuff. Is that good enough right now? Good. All right. You lost connection or I lost connection? Alright, so yeah. Good. So yes, that's a C major triad because it only has 3 notes in there. Looks like he's about to play that one. Also a C major triad because it only has 3 notes. C, E, and G. Oh, okay, you did. So that means the stream is still going. No hiccups. Alright, that's good. Alright, so triads, we're covering that. Did I get my thing yet? Yay, I did. Here are the notes. Alright, so let's check this out. So we'll be referencing this as we go along with him. It's only 6 pages long. Looks like he uses the same thing that I was turned on to, Guitar Scientist Editor. Alright. We'll go back and forth as we continue watching this.
These are usually the 2 types of chords guitarists learn first, but I strongly recommend that you also learn your basic triad shapes on different string sets as soon as possible. As you learn triads 3 strings at a time, you start to see how the guitar is laid out with patterns across the neck, and this will dramatically improve your visualization and fretboard navigation. This is also a fantastic opportunity to learn inversions, which are the same exact chords with notes inverted or rearranged.
Which is also something that I teach my students. First we start off by, learning, like those basic things there. So like learning your basic open chords or bar chords, depending on the chord. Like in the key C, we go C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor. Everyone's favorite chord to forget, the B diminished. And we also do the same thing for the key of G. So G major, A minor, B minor, C major, D major, E minor, F sharp diminished. Another favorite for students to forget. And then, if you're doing 6 strings, which most people do. We go to the key of F next. So F major, G minor, A minor, B flat major, C major, D minor, and E diminished. With the 7th string, I usually go to, we go to the key of D major or B minor for the 3rd one. But then, yeah, after that, I'll teach people how to just play those chords like in a scale. So how it's just going one thing after the next. So yeah, this is C, D minor, E minor, F, G, G down there, A minor, B diminished, C major, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor, B diminished, C again, C major, D minor, E minor down there, F, G, A, B diminished, C, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor again, B diminished, and then, yep, we go over the inversions as well. Neat little trick to find the first inversion. Start with the power chord. If it's a major chord, you take the bass note there and go up a major third. So there you go, you got your first inversion major chord. For the first inversion minor chord, still take the power chord and you move the bass note up a step and a half. So there you got yourself the first inversion minor chord. And of course we do the second inversions as well. Not as neat of a trick to figure this one out. But if you know your inverted power chords, you can start with that and then change the top note down to the major third or the minor third. Anyway, so yes, those are things that I teach my students. And then we also do arpeggios with it. Whoops. Anyway, let's continue on here. So far I know what he's talking about, so that's a good thing.
There are a lot of different triads, but I say 4 are primary, and we'll discuss a few others later. You probably already know your main...
Interesting. So the way I was taught triad, what a triad chord is that it's a 3-note chord built by stacking thirds. So from one note, you go up a major third, so 2 whole steps, and then a minor third, which gives you major. And then you can go up a minor third, step and a half, then a major third, which is 2 whole steps. So that's a minor chord. You can also go up 2 minor thirds. That's a diminished. You can also go up 2 major thirds. So that's augmented. So it sounds like he's about to say, or what we're going to get into is, it's not always that. I know Rick Beato referred to suspended seconds and fours as also triad chords. But everything I was taught and I see online, besides Rick Beato, is a triad chord, is a 3-note chord built by stacking thirds. And you can only have either a major third, then a minor third, or the other way, minor third, then a major third, or 2 minor thirds and 2 major thirds. So, again, this guy's got the degrees in music, so let's see. Will it actually be suspended chords?
Major and minor triads. We also have diminished and augmented. Each of these chords can fit into one of 3 categories, and as you'll see throughout this video, these 3 categories are really going to be the only ones you need for the vast majority of your chord theory knowledge. And now we're on to 7th chords. Triads, trisect.
Okay, let's go back. I want to see that. No. Okay, hold on.
Chord theory knowledge.
Key points and action steps. 3-note chords, 4 types. Major, minor, diminished, and augmented. Alright, that all sounds good. So, anyway, so for those who don't know, let's talk about that so we can his video seems to be, well, it's not too short, but he's going through quickly because, you know, that's YouTube. You got to go fast in order to keep the attention, right? So for those that don't know, triad chord, like he's talking about here, 3-note chord. So you take a major scale, and we'll take the C scale, because, well, why not? So you got your notes that make the scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then you can continue on the same thing, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and so on. So it's just those 7 notes, C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. You can number those. It's for intervals. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. First interval, second interval, third interval, fourth interval, fifth interval, sixth interval, and 7th interval. So like that 7th interval, if I take that and move it down this way, if I flat it, it becomes a flat 7. So the major triad is taking the first, the third, and the 5th note in that major scale, also known as the first, third, and 5th intervals, and you just stack them up, C, E, G, C, E, G. So when you play this chord here, C, E, G, C again, E again. So that's a C chord, that's a C chord, you're just playing another G. You could also play C chord like this, where you have the G in the bass. It's like a beefier open C chord. But anyway, so C, E, G, so first, third, and fifth. To make it minor, you take the third interval and you flat it. To make it diminished, you take the minor chord and then flat the 5. So you'd have 1, flat 3, and now flat 5. For the augmented one he talked about, it's easy to start with the major chord first. So first, third, and fifth, but then we sharp the 5. So there we go. Those are the 4 triads that he was talking about. Major, which is the first, third, and fifth. Minor, 1, flat 3, and 5. Diminished, 1, flat 3, and a flat 5. And augmented is a 1, 3, sharp 5. Okay. Any questions? Probably not. At least not yet. But if you have questions, definitely say it. Alright, let's get to the next part here. It looks like 7th chords now.
And now we're on to 7th chords. Triads, tricycle, triangle, 3. So 7th chords must have 7 notes. Actually, no. 7th chords only have 4 notes. But to explain why, we need to learn about the first music game ever created, and it's called Play a Note, Skip a Note, Repeat. And the
first music game ever. Wait. Something flashed on the screen there. It was so fast.
7th chords only have 4 notes, but to explain why, we need to learn about the first music game ever created.
According to a music doctor, so it must be true. Now, does that mean he is the music doctor? Or a person who taught him? I have no idea.
And it's called Play a Note, Skip a Note, Repeat. And the rules of this game teach us a lot about chords. So we take a major scale, play a note, skip, and repeat. When we get to 3 notes, we have a triad, and if we continue the game, our next note is the 7th, hence 7th chords. Google will tell you there are 5 types of 7th chords, but I like to say there are 6. Major 7th, dominant 7th, minor 7th, half diminished, fully diminished, and minor major 7.
Okay, so that's what's wrong about Google. Hold on a second. Let me go back here. How many 7th chords are there? He said, why we feel empty? Why do I feel empty all of a sudden? What's going on here? Uh-oh. Is this insight to Andre? Well, that's no good.
There are 5 types.
5 types. Interesting. I bet you I could think of more. In fact, I have... Because you can... All right, well, let's watch, and then I'll go over what I'm thinking.
Types of seventh chords, but I like to say there are six: major seventh, dominant seventh, minor seventh, half diminished, fully diminished, and minor major seven. By the way, that's why you should learn guitar from a person and not just Google. Like,
Well, there you go. One guitar course. Learn the simple systems for mastering your favorite music fast. I highly doubt your system is going to help someone learn death metal fast. But maybe I am wrong. Anyway, so I want to... Alright, let's go over this. Let's bring up my notes. My notes stuff. These are not the notes we're using right now. Alright, well, I gotta delete all this stuff in here anyway. Properties. Let's move you over here. Okay, select all and delete. So, let's go through each one that he mentioned.
my courses like below. There's seventh. My 5 types of seventh chords, but I like to say there are six.
Alright, so we said major 7. So major 7 takes a major triad, 1, 3, and 5, and you add a 7. That equals a major 7th chord. Next he says...
Major 7, dominant 7.
Dominant 7. So this also begins with your major triad, but then it adds in a flat 7 or minor 7 interval. So that gives you dominant 7. Typically written as just 7, like C7 or G7, for example. Am I still using the red V pick? Red V pick? Did I have a red V pick? I haven't used a V pick in a long time. No, I'm using usually this guy right here, and if not this, then a gray one. Bog Street picks. Are you thinking of the sick pick? Because I think that was red. Okay, so next chord.
Minor 7.
Minor 7, okay. So now, minor 7, that starts with your minor triad. And then you add in a minor 7, a minor 7th interval, or flat 7. That gives you the minor 7 chord. And then he says...
Half diminished.
Half diminished, okay. So that is starting with the diminished triad. So 1, flat 3, flat 5, or you could say roots, minor 3rd, diminished 5th, plus flat 7 or minor 7 interval. That gives you the minor 7, flat 5, also known as half diminished 7. Gravity pick. Gravity pick, I think that's what you're thinking of. Yeah, I was using the gravity for a little while there. Quite a while, actually. I definitely like the Bog Streets much better. They never slip.
Fully diminished and...
Yes, the diminished 7. So diminished 7 is, again, with the diminished triad to start. But this time, you add in a double flat 7, and that gives you the fully diminished 7. The double flat 7 is also the same note as a 6th interval, major 6. So, same sound anyway. So let's use our C major scale to figure that out. So, again, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's a B note. So if we flat that, becomes B flat. If we flat it again, and thinking of it as a double flat 7, it's a B double flat. So maybe let's use a different chord on this one. Let's use a B diminished for this. So building a B diminished chord, we can start the B major scale. So we take the first, we go to the third. So like he's talked about a moment ago, you skip every other note. So that would give us a D sharp. So B is the 1, D sharp is the 3. We need to flat it. So now we have a D natural. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, fifth note in. That's an F sharp, but we need to have a flat 5. So there we go to an F natural. So B, D, F. That's what we got so far for the diminished. So let's go to the minor 7 flat 5 first, because that is in the key of C major, and I think it's easier to understand because it's all going to be natural sounding notes. So if we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that gives us an A sharp. So if we flat that, now we have an A natural. So that gives us B, D, F, A. So a fully diminished 7, which does occur in harmonic minor, we flat the flat 7. So down to that. So again, calling this A double flat because of theory rules. However, if we go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's the same note right there. We would call it different depending on what mode we're actually in. Because if I say all the notes in row in B major, it'd be B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp. Well, A double flat and G sharp are the same tone. Sorry, not A double flat. A flat. A flat. A flat, not A double flat. I'm thinking double flat 7. But in this case, it's just A flat. So either way, you wind up with the same 4 notes. Whether you look at this as a 1, flat 3, flat 5, major 6, or 1, flat 3, flat 5, double flat 7. So you can call it a B diminished 7. Or as I was also taught, I'm very curious what he would say, or other people that have music degrees would say, B minor 6 flat 5. Because what is a B minor 6? A B minor 6 is B, D, F sharp, G sharp. Take that right there, which is a B minor 6, and then flat the 5. Anyway, depending on what you consider the root note, what mode you're in, and all that stuff, can determine what you call the chord. Next! Right, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, and then after that he says minor major 7.
And minor major 7.
Okay, so minor major 7 takes us back to the minor triad. But this time we add in a major 7th interval, or just natural 7, and that gives us exactly what he said, a minor major 7. Or, I guess we'll do it how he has it, M-A-J, like that. Now, I was also taught this was called a minor natural 7. but I never see it written that way. I have seen once it written as minor sharp 7, and I get why they did it that way, but I feel like that's technically wrong because a sharp 7 is just back to the root note. Anyway, so one thing I'm curious about, if he says they're really just these 6 7th chords, why anyone on Google would say that it's only 5 chords, there are 5 types of 7th chords, I don't understand, because there's more combinations than this. What about adding 7s to an augmented chord? Because that's a possibility too. The way I was taught this stuff, and the guy who wrote the book, and the guy who taught, well, I know the guy who wrote the book, he has a degree in music. I think my old teacher had a degree, but I'm not sure. I really don't know. But the book he had me get definitely had that. But anyway, basically any of the triads you have, your major, minor, diminished, or augmented, you can add a 7 or flat 7 to all of them. So we got like up here, let me try and like organize this a bit. Whoops, that was the wrong button. So right there you got the 2 different chords you can have, starting with the major triad. So you add a 7 to a major chord, you get a major 7. You add a flat 7 to a major chord, you get a dominant 7. When you add, we'll just kind of go like this order here. We'll always start major 7 and then minor 7. So we add a major 7th interval to a minor chord, we get the minor major 7. We add the minor 7th interval to a minor chord, we get a minor 7. So can you see one thing that's missing right now? And maybe he'll talk about this, I have no idea. Well, the diminished 7 is a weird one, and like maybe I should explain where that's found, or at least where I found it. Like in harmonic minor, the 7th mode in harmonic minor, you find a fully diminished 7 because of how the interval structure is laid out. Let's see if anyone asks, hey, what is that interval structure? Tell me about it. Anyway, so one thing that we're missing here is, well, what about a diminished chord plus a major 7? That's an interval combination. So we'll take that B diminished again. Start with that. That's where we can start here. So that's how I teach students to play a B diminished, because it's a movable shape. So if you take the root note here, the octave of the root note, and you drop that down a whole step, it becomes the minor 7 flat 5, or a half diminished 7. And then if we drop it down another step, or a half step, so the flat 7 becomes that double flat 7, and there's your B diminished 7. So what if we go back just a half step? What the hell do we call that one? I haven't taught this in forever. Minor major 7 flat 5. That might be an appropriate name. That makes sense because you had the minor major 7 then a flat 5. You know what? I actually have this written down. Let me see. What was I taught on how to call this thing? Let's see. Chord theory. I'm going to change the view. You can't see what I'm looking at. Chord formulas. 7th chord explanations. An old PDF put together, basically ripping off the thing that I was taught out of, making little changes myself. Diminished major 7. Yeah, okay. So that's how I was taught to say it. So just put that there. Alright, there you go. B diminished, major 7. Which makes sense. I could also see it being called the minor major 7 flat 5. Yeah, basically I'm just putting together what's going on here. Because yeah, that's, you got your augmented chords as well that you could be building up or adding 7s to. So you say for this one diminished, and there's a major 7 in parentheses, or maybe even just diminished major 7 like that, or I could still see it being called like minor major 7, like flat 5, something like that. I think those are all valid names because it tells you what's going on. And then here, again, your augmented chord. So the 1, 3, and then a sharp 5. If you add a 7 to that, God, I haven't taught this in forever either. The hell do you call that one? That would be it'd be like major 7 sharp 5, right? Yep, major 7 sharp 5. And then 1, 3 sharp 5 plus a flat 7. That is augmented 7. Yep, augmented 7. And there you go. So that gives us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 7th chords. I suppose you could like try and say, well, what if you add a double flat 7 to the other stuff too? I don't know. Does that ever happen in a mode? I'm not sure. It might just make more sense just to say it's a 6th interval. But again, it really depends on what like mode you're hitting up there. Because like in harmonic minor, that right there, that contains a double flat 7. 1, flat 2, flat 3, flat 4, flat 5, flat 6, double flat 7. Anyway, let's get back to his video. This is becoming rather in-depth. And we're not even halfway done with his.
By the way, that's why you should learn guitar from a person and not just Google. My course is linked below. Our 7th chords all fit into the same 3 categories, and some actually fit into multiple categories. The theory involved with this is actually super interesting, so you'll want to stick around for this later in the video. You'll recall that we made 7th chords with our play a note.
Damn it.
Video.
7th chords, key points and first steps. 4-note chords containing a 7th. 6 types: major, minor, dominant, diminished, half diminished, minor, major 7. Start by learning 2 voices per chord: low E, string root, and A string root. So again, what about those other chords that I had up? Do those not count? Do the other ones up there not count? The other 3? Why would they not count? Those are interval combinations, so how are they not valid? Let's find out. Maybe.
You'll recall that we made 7th chords with our play a note, skip a note game, and you probably also know that there are only 7 notes in the scale. So at this point, it looks like our game is done, but as you can see,
Gonna go to ninths, 11s, and 13s.
Are still a few unaccounted for notes in the scale, and this video isn't nearly done yet. So our next step is to incorporate the other notes from the scale by extending the scale another octave. The first note, C, becomes the 8th note, or our octave. The second note becomes the 9th, and so on. Please don't let this confuse you. These are all the same exact notes as the first 7, they're just played at a higher pitch. Just like how you have a high E string and a low E string, they're the same note but in different octaves. So 2 is the same as 9, 3 is the same as 10, and so on. Since these notes extend beyond the first octave of the scale, they're called extensions. And each of these types of chords has an...
See, that's what I thought extensions were. But I'm pretty sure we watched a video from Brian Kelly, Zombie Guitar, referring to a 7th chord as an extension. I didn't think that was right. Maybe I'm remembering wrong. But I thought he said that, and that would not be correct.
A name that corresponds to the last note added. 9 chords are the simplest and most common extended chords. You could almost always add a natural 9 to a major 7, minor 7, or dominant 7 chord, since their corresponding scale all have the natural 2nd or 9th degree.
Because I've already spent a great deal of time going into music theory stuff, I'm going to not dive into the 9th chords right now. But basically, as I was taught, you can add a 9 or flat 9 to really any of those things on the screen right now. Some stuff you can add even a sharp 9. Like a dominant 7 sharp 9. That's a funky one. But you can't add a sharp 9 to, let's say, a minor 7. That's because a sharp 9 and a flat 3 are the same sound, the same note for the technically. So can't have a flat 3 and a sharp 9 in the same chord because it's the same note.
However, since dominant 7 fits into the tension category, we can flatten or sharpen the 2nd, which gives us a total of 3 dominant 9 options.
That makes sense to me. Look at that, sharp 9, just like I said.
The sharp 9 and the flat 9 intervals are outside of our Mixolydian scale, which...
Yes, indeed. So he calls it Mixolydian scale. So does that mean scale and mode really are interchangeable? Because I swear, and of course, you know, internet, right? I've read or heard someone say scale and mode are not the same thing. I was wondering, well, why is that? I mean, he just said there, Mixolydian scale. Scale, mode. Sounds like they're interchangeable. Like bar and measure. Is that the Jason Becker carving guitar? Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Which is the scale we get our dominant 7th chord from. But adding notes from outside the scale...
We could get the outside notes from Superlocrian, but that's a different video. Got it.
It's just another way to add more tension, and since we are in a tension category, it works beautifully. We don't have time to fully explore the concept of tension chords and extensions in this video, but I'll just quickly tell you that almost any group of notes outside of our key signature can work as tension chords. And if you ask a music theorist why certain notes work together to create tension chords, they'll certainly have fancy, complicated explanations, but we can really think of this all as just a tension and release kind of a thing. And here's proof.
For the following tension chords, every note is outside of our normal scale. Don't worry about what the chords are. Instead, just notice how every time we return to C major, everything feels normal or resolved. I don't know, that all sounded weird to me. Those last two chords actually seem like it resolved with the C okay. I don't know. Maybe I need to hear that again. Let's listen again.
That almost any group of notes outside of our key signature can work as tension chords. And if you ask a music theorist why certain notes work together to create tension chords, they'll certainly have fancy, complicated explanations, but we can really think of this all as just a tension and release kind of a thing. And here's proof.
Tension chords, key points and first steps, chords that create tension that drives a resolution to a major or minor chord. Many different chord types, or many different types. Start with dominant seventh chords, dominant seven extensions, and augmented triads. I'm assuming that's just a suggestion. Yeah, it didn't sound like it resolved very much, did it? But maybe it's because his ear is more sophisticated than ours.
This will be the perfect time for me to introduce you to a concept I call
That sounded very mocking, and I wasn't trying to be.
soft rules. They're going to be crucial as we move from ninths to further extensions. And I use the term soft rules whenever
Soft rule, an idea or concept that applies a lot of the time, but is or can be broken whenever you want.
I'm explaining most music theory to my students. The name is exactly what it sounds like, and here's why I say it. I was lucky enough to study music theory in several institutions with many teachers from 2006 all the way until 2022 when I completed my PhD. I studied and did research on many different types of music, which included research on how competing music theories were codified across the world through
Competing music theories. So that's a thing. Competing music theories. That seems so stupid to me. Why would there be competing music theories? It's math. That's how we know what Ionian is. That's how we know how to turn Ionian into Aeolian. That's how we know what a major chord is. That's how we know what a minor chord is. Or major 7 or minor 7 and things like that. Because it's a combination of specific sounds. To me, that sounds like saying competing math equations, where 1 plus 1 equals something here, but 1 plus 1 will equal something else over here. That doesn't make any sense. It needs to be one thing. One. Whatever. I mean, technically it is one thing. When you hear the chords, you hear the notes being played together, it's the same sound. But perhaps when he says competing music theory, different ways of explaining the same thing, perhaps? Perhaps there's validity to that. I can't say.
throughout history. One of the biggest lessons that I learned is that music rules are invented by normal people just like you and me. Lessons that I learned in music. I studied and did research on many different types of music, which included research on how competing music theories were codified across the world throughout history.
Throughout history. Okay. Probably shouldn't have cut that off so soon. Yeah, things evolve and grow as we explain and understand things. So, like what we consider, I don't know, maybe how things are explained today is not the same as it was 1,000 years ago. So that seems fine, but like, what's the answer today? That's what I want to know.
One of the biggest lessons that I learned is that music rules are invented by normal people just like you and me. Sure, some of these rules have pretty solid mathematical ideas behind them, but some don't. And if someone creative enough comes along to break a rule, that new broken thing just gets considered a rule 100 years later when someone writes about it and puts it in the textbook. In fact, good music textbooks are basically just a list of really old rules, along with the famous people who broke the rules and made music better as a result. So whenever I teach music, again, I always say soft rules to, of course, encourage my students to learn these time-tested ideas, but to also not be afraid of breaking the rules if the music calls for it. So we're going to use the extended chord major 7 sharp 11 to illustrate several soft rules. You'll notice that this chord includes our original major 7 chord, our sharp 11 extension, and the 9th extension. That's because, technically speaking, every extended chord includes all the intervals leading up to the final extension that names the chord itself. Soft rule. So a 9 chord includes the triad, the 7th, and the 9th. An 11th chord includes the triad, the 7th, the 9th, and the 11th. And a 13th chord includes the triad, 7th, 9th, 11th, and 13.
Yep.
However, in practice, we often drop notes along the way.
Yes, indeed. I wonder if you're going to say the same thing I was taught. The 5th interval is the most expendable. You can kick that one out. It doesn't really matter. For 11th chords, you could leave out the 9th interval. And for 13th chords, you could also leave out the 9 and the 11. It's like a 13th chord. You could play the 1st, 3rd, 7th, and 13. And technically, it's a 13th chord. I think that's what he's going to get at. Something like that.
Such as the 5th, or sometimes even the 9th. After all, a 13th chord should, technically speaking, include 7 notes, which is literally impossible to play.
Yeah, it is impossible to play on guitar.
Go back.
He said what I said.
13 drop notes along the way, such as the 5th, or sometimes even the 9th. After all, a 13th chord should, technically speaking, include 7 notes, which is literally impossible to play on a 6-string guitar.
Yep.
Keep in mind, a lot of these music theory concepts were created with the piano, where we have 10 fingers, or orchestras, where we have dozens of musicians, not the guitar. Okay, so major 7 sharp 11 includes 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 sharp 11. Here's another soft rule: you can omit notes from a chord. That's how we get this very common major 7 sharp 11 voicing on the guitar. Now, when you look at the intervals of this major...
That makes me feel better about teaching students how we can call that something like a major 7 sharp 11, because you don't need to include the 9. I wonder how he would feel about just 1, 3, 7, and 11. Would he still call it a major 11, or would he say it's a major 7 add 11?
Your 7 sharp 11 chord, you might assume that there must also be a major 7 with a natural 11 chord, since the perfect fourth is found in the major scale.
Good, he's going to go over that.
Well, you could play a major 7 with a perfect fourth, or an 11th, but this is pretty uncommon because playing a perfect fourth with a major third causes an often undesirable clash. And that's why that play a note, skip a note game is another soft rule, because sometimes you have to sharp or flatten a note. In this case, we are sharpening the 11th, although technically speaking, you could play the 11th if you like the way it sounds.
In fact, the more I played the chord while making this video, the more I started to really like it. By the way, that is another way music expands. We hear something so-called wrong so often that it becomes so-called right. You like the chord? Let me know in the comments. Well, as I tell my students, music theory is only there to explain what's happening. So it sounds like rules of he's talking about are like you can only use these chords or use these notes in order to play something. Which, if those really were rules, it's extremely stupid to me. Of course, I suppose those of us who like extreme sounding metal, we are A-okay with not following rules because, well, that's just stupid. If you play this chord, you can only go to this one or that one. No. Terrible idea to be restricted like that. I mean, I think it's a fine thing to help you learn the fretboard or learn how things sound going from one thing to the next, but play whatever the heck you want. You can use theory to explain what you're doing, but theories shouldn't be there to tell you you have to do this or you have to do that.
When you combine all of these soft rules, we get our major 7 sharp 11 chord, which is very common. Now, there are, of course, a ton of extended chords.
Oh my goodness. Don't argue with people, just learn the extended chords you like and whatever chords you need for the music you were learning. I don't know what there is to argue about, but okay.
Chords, and if we covered every soft rule, the video would never end. But if you want to continue down this path and have everything explained slowly with more detail, it's all included with my course link below. And that one-time purchase comes with every other lesson I ever made on a ton of different topics, and all of my future lessons, lifetime updates, and so on. Again, it's all linked below if you're interested. So that prior soft rule of play all notes leading up to the final extension can be limiting since it forces us to play a bunch of notes we may not want to play. That's where add chords come in. Whenever you see add next to a chord, that simply means play that triad plus whatever note is indicated.
Yep.
For example, we have both major and minor add 9 chords, and they don't have the 7th. There's a bunch of these.
You can also do diminished add 9 and augmented add 9
chords, and they sound really beautiful, especially on the guitar. The big exclusion from the add category is the 13. There's no add 13 chord.
Because, was he going to say add 6? It's just the 6th chord. Whatever.
Instead, we call it a 6th chord.
Yes. Very good. 6th chord, yes.
And if you're wondering why it's called a major 6th chord or a minor 6th chord instead of a major or minor add 13, we just need to think back to how we came up with our 13th chord to begin with. So we take a major scale, play a note, skip, and repeat. The rules of the game don't apply to the 6th, since the 6th note does not extend beyond our 7-note scale.
Yep.
And now we're...
Alright, we'll read this out loud. 6 chords and add chords. Triad plus the 6 is a 6th chord. Triad plus anything else is an add chord. Learn minor and major 6 chords with E and A string roots. Well, there's also minor flat 6. There's 2 of those in your major keys. You got your C majors. What else here? Where do I want to play that? C major 6. D minor 6. E minor flat 6. Because if it was an E minor 6, it would be this. And that's out of key. You have F major 6. How do I want to do this today? I want to go up to that one. That's a pain in the butt. Yeah, there we go. Duh. Haven't done 6 chords with people in a while. So there's an F6 or F major 6, G6. You just make this chord and take the pinky off. A minor flat 6. You can do it like that. So you can do it like this. B minor 6. No, B minor flat 6 flat 5 is the way I was taught to spell that chord out, which is basically that right there. I suppose you could write it out as B diminished and then in parentheses have it flat 6. But again, as I was taught, it is B minor, flat 6, flat 5. And that's what you call it when you have a diminished chord plus the flat 6. Which are all inversions of 7th chords. I'm not getting into that right now. I've done it before, but it's true.
We're at the point where we can look at 6 chords in depth versus 7th chords and extensions, and I can give you a taste of how learning all of these soft rules allows you to break basically any rule of music. Our example is this. Once you leave triads, major chords aren't really major, and minor chords aren't really minor. And here's what I mean. When we look at a major 7 and compare it to a major 6, the major 6 is actually more stable and resolute. That's because the interval between the root and the 7th in a major 7th chord is pretty tense. Now,
it's a half step apart.
This is the desirable and beautiful tension, but it's tense nonetheless. You can hear it more in certain inversions, and it can even make it difficult to understand the chord quality itself at times. When we turn that into a major 6 chord, the tension completely dissipates and the major sound is completely resolute.
There's also an A minor 7, I believe. Is that right? Because the C6 is C, E, G, A, C, E, G, A, C, E, G. Right. So this C, E, G, A. No, E minor. Sorry, E minor flat 6. Right. So C major 7 is the same as an E minor flat 6. So C major 6 C, E, G, A, C, E. Yeah, C major 6 is A minor 7. Right, C major 6 or C6 and A minor 7. Anyway.
So a soft rule could be major 6 has a purer major sound than major 7. However, even though major 6 chords are very pure, we can rearrange the notes to create a perfect minor 7 chord. And that's because a major 6 chord is a minor 7 chord.
I told you. I just said it and we looked at it.
Chord in first inversion. So now we see a major 6 is more stable than a major 7, but a major 6 is really a minor 7. Let's go even deeper by recalling 2 prior soft rules. You can almost always add a natural 9 to a major 7, minor 7, or dominant 7 chord. Here's another soft rule: you can omit notes from a chord. Okay, so if we apply both of those rules, we can take our minor 7 chord, which is also a major 6 chord, we can add the 9th and also omit the root note. That's all fair and it sounds great. But it also technically turns the minor chord into another major 7 chord.
Technically it is.
So now a minor 7 can be a minor 9, which can be a major 7. That's also a major 6 or a minor 7.
Yeah, I guess that's what he meant by major isn't really minor and minor isn't really major. He's talking like major 7 isn't. Yeah, I get it. I get it. Yeah, depending on what you consider the root note, as I said earlier, what you consider the root notes and the interval structure will determine what you call the chord. So, but yeah, every 7th chord is a 6th chord, every 6th chord is a 7th chord, just like every suspended 2nd is a suspended 4th, and vice versa. Music theory is neat and weird.
Apart from triads, major isn't really major and minor isn't really minor. And our minor 6th...
Apart from triads. Okay, so got it.
Chord is a really nice, dark, and stable option for a minor progression, but it's also a little bit weird. So a minor 6 chord has the same exact notes as a minor 7 flat 5 chord, which we already learned is a tension chord. So So now even our categorization of these chords is getting completely blurred because a minor 6 is minor, but if we invert it, it's also a tension.
I guess I never really think about chords as, what does he put, what were those three categories?
But if we invert it, it's also
Major, minor, and tension. Got it. So just major, minor, tension. So anything that's not major or minor is considered tension, basically. Yeah, I just never really think about it that way, because like a suspended second chord to me is neither major nor minor, but it doesn't have tension. I don't feel like that's a really tense sounding chord. Like, does this sound like tense to anybody? Or the suspended 4 version? I suppose you could say, well, it's not really resolved sounding. Kind of feels like something's floating up in the air. So I guess you could argue that's like tension, but when I think tension, I'm thinking like something's like really, you know, just like very off. Like that's got tension. Like something's just really wrong, you know, like god damn, all kinds of nastiness in there. But this, it's pleasant. It's also pleasant. Sus 2 sounds more resolved than Sus 4, right? But then that's E Sus 4, which is the same notes as A Sus 2. Anyway, continuing.
also a tension. So I may have gotten...
Alright, so there we go. Alright, let's keep going.
Carried away with that last section because I get really excited about this stuff and then I have to share it with you. But I don't want you to feel like this stuff is actually confusing or difficult or complicated. In fact, let me just tell you and show you why I actually made this video. So when I first started playing guitar, after about a year, my dad found this book at a thrift shop and bought it for me.
Damn.
It's kind of cool that on the cover of the book is actually carving guitars. But anyway, when I first got this book, I was both excited and mortified because I saw 12,000 in the title. And I thought that to become good at guitar, I'd have to memorize every single one of these chords in this book.
Definitely not.
But again, once I started actually learning guitar and learning music theory, I realized, like I showed you in that last section, that a lot of these chords are actually the same thing.
Yep.
There certainly isn't 12,000 things we need to learn. So that last section was really made to show you that once you learn a few of these key things, everything starts to fit into place much easier and you have to learn a lot less.
Yeah, it's like, you know, when I have students try and like, oh, want to take several weeks or months of just working on like the same, like say 7 shapes. Like, oh, I have to memorize every single thing, every single thing, every single thing. Like, no, you don't. The most important thing is to remember how the chord is built, what it means. Because if you can remember the theory behind it, then you're good to go. That's really it. Know the theory behind it. Know how to manipulate it. Some memorization, yeah, it is important and necessary. But to memorize every single type of 7th chord, every single type of 6th chord, 11th chord, add this, add that, whatever, that's good luck. Good luck. And to do it in all, what was it, 30 keys? Silly. I'm still saying it's 12. But then again, 12 keys, and then plus your exotic scales like harmonic minor, melodic minor, Hungarian minor. Apparently there's also Neapolitan minor, Neapolitan major. Anyway, it ain't happening. Ain't happening. But if you understand the theory behind it all, it makes it way easier to understand what's going on and to be able to explain things to people. So yeah, basically it's 12,000 different diagrams. Jesus, that is a fuck ton. God, that's a lot.
But all of that talk of seventh chords and sixth chords and extensions is easy to forget about the triad. In fact, a lot of guitarists feel like open chords and triads are kind of a beginner or transitionary chord on our way to the more important and complicated extended chords, but that couldn't be further from the truth. In my opinion, the simplicity and clarity of triads will forever make them the most important chords. So let's conclude by discussing a couple more triad tricks. You'll remember from our earlier discussion on major 7 sharp 11 chords that playing a perfect fourth with a major third causes an often undesirable clash. Sus 4 chords give us the ability to use that tension 4 sound by immediately resolving it down to the major third. And then we have the sus 2 chord, which is another version of that same idea, but now we're taking the natural 2 and resolving it upward to the third. And these sounds are extremely common in many genres of music, from church hymns to present-day pop. The most obvious use for this chord knowledge is to write beautiful chord progressions, but learning chord theory is a huge shortcut to learning how to improvise and play single note lines, because we can take all of these same rules and same chords and just apply them to single notes.
Arpeggios.
In other words, every beautiful chord and chord progression is also a beautiful melody waiting to happen.
Yep.
If you like this lesson, check out my course link below to really start to develop mastery
Any
of this
style of
material.
music? Well, again, I question that one. Noise core? Probably not. There you go. Every guitar chord explained, do not agree. That did not explain every single one. It has a very good overview of theory, but explaining every single possibility, every single combination out there, it doesn't explain that. So, lots of good information in here. Clickbait title. I didn't expect it to cover every single one because it's not possible. But there you go. I mean, definitely good information in there. Certainly goes pretty quick. I think most people who don't know these concepts already could be confused by it. But he's selling his course to explain it all in good detail, and I would imagine his course would be very helpful for those who want to try it out. And it would explain what he's discussing in much more detail. Because he certainly has studied this stuff, I would say, far more than me, because he went to all these different schools for many years. And I did not. I just took one-on-one lessons from a guy who I believe has a degree. He went to, he did. He went to school for it. I don't know how long, though. But anyway, yeah, like there were other seventh chords that I had brought up here. Different interval combinations that were not discussed. He didn't talk about minor flat 6, which, you know, if you have like the notes A, C, E, and F, first, flat, third, 5, and flat 6, those notes of it, your Aeolian mode, what would you call that? Anyway, but I wasn't sure if he was actually considering suspended seconds and suspended 4 as a triad, though. That was unclear to me. So maybe he does consider it a triad. Maybe those are considered triads now. Because again, Rick Beato says they are. And perhaps Andre was also saying they were. It's a 3-note chord. And again, as I was taught, triads are 3-note chords built by stacking thirds. So even though a suspended second or a suspended 4 are also 3-note chords, technically they're not triads, because they're not built by stacking thirds. They're just a suspended chord. So anyway, and did you know 7th chords are basically just 2 different triads put together? Like a C major 7 is a C major and an E minor put together. So that case, you got the E minor plus that C would give you the E minor flat 6. Anyway, well, that was a long one. Freaking over an hour discussing a 17-minute video. Hot damn. And that's going to conclude the stream today. As I mentioned at the beginning of this, for those that missed it, I'm dead tired. I need to take a little bit of a nap, or at least try to, because I have a doctor's appointment to go to. My first checkup in well over 20 years. I didn't expect this to go so damn long, because I was going to get to doing some riff writing afterwards, but I guess that's going to have to wait. So next week, it's going to be either riff writing and or harmony writing. So if I write the riffs before then, no riff writing. But harmony writing, yes, because there's a bunch of stuff I want to do extra harmonies with for things that have already been released. Try and get them views, damn it. And I might as well do it on the stream, because I need to do it sometime. And finding time in between students throughout the week is really freaking difficult. Alright, that's that. Hopefully everyone learned something. As always, if you have questions about what was discussed here, let me know. Thank you to everyone who came in and watched the stream. Thank you, Plastodon, for talking. And Garcia. You left one comment, that's good. Riff writing, I would like to watch, if that's what you're doing. It's either going to be the riff writing. Yeah, it depends on where I get with it, too. I'm still contemplating if I should do 3 or 6. But most likely it's going to be 3 chromatic things. Anyway, that's that. I will stream again, same time next week. Alright. This stream